All right, it is Wednesday, and we are behind the table with not only our lovely Sara Haines, but our incredibly lovely Jameela Jamil.
Hello.
Welcome. Thank you so much for
Hi.
being here.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you and Sara go back a little bit because this is really cool. Sara, you sat down with Jameela for her first American interview when you were at GMA Day in 2018.
Yeah, which was weird because she was already a big deal. And I was like, we're your first?
Yeah. So that was a good place? Or yeah.
I was so nervous that day, and obviously I'd had a huge disaster because chocolate had melted all over.
That's
all
when you
of
wore your
my
pajamas.
I had to wear my pajamas. I had to wear my pajamas on GMA.
Okay.
Because
They were cute,
I
though.
landed the night before at like 10 p.m. and there was chocolate all over all of my clothes. There was nowhere to get anything dry cleaned, and I didn't have a stylist or anything at the time. I just had my normal clothes. So the only thing I could wear on The View was this jumpsuit that I'd flown in on, and I decided to take some cough syrup in a yellow cab, which is a very bad decision in traffic.
No, that's
and so
rough.
it jerks, and purple cough syrup goes all over my crotch specifically. And now I'm like, now I really can't wear this. So the only thing I have is my pajamas, because they were in a separate section, and I have my little pajamas and my slippers that I always travel with. And so I came on GMA for my first time doing American press, fully pajamaed, slippered out.
I
We're
gotta
like,
tell you,
and
but-
this is why she has not been here before.
Yeah.
Yes.
She wears
Pajamas.
Yeah, I got a stylist after that. Yeah.
It all worked out, though. We're still talking about it 5 years later, 6 years later. That's pretty good.
That was a hell of a way to meet.
That was, hey, you owned it.
Thank
If
you.
you're going to do that, you come in confident. and
the
you make
best thing though is that I did it with like full hair and makeup.
Oh,
She
of
looks
course.
I did
stunning in her
full
pajamas.
glam,
Yep.
but
We'll see if we can pull a photo for the podcast. And of course, this was for The Good Place, which is one of my all-time favorite shows. There are so few shows, especially that start so strong and end so strong and are so thoughtful and interesting. And you must hear from fans still, because they're
constantly, and people are always on their like third, fourth, or fifth rewatch, because the scarier the world becomes, the more people
Cling to
look to it for how comforting it is.
And it's just so thoughtful. My 13-year-old, I just started watching it with her.
Oh,
and,
sweet.
Yeah.
Well,
and-
it's a clever way of, getting the medicine down, right? The spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. So we just kind of wrap it in penis and fart jokes.
Yeah.
But really, it's immense, like, moral philosophy.
Yeah.
Sure, we're talking trolley problems and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff now with my
exactly.
daughter. It's a lot of fun. Let's talk about your podcast, because you said that you were fatigued with inspiration.
Done.
And I'm just fatigued.
So tired.
How about you, Sara?
I'm
Yeah.
exhausted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No inspiration. I'm just tired. But you started this podcast, Wrong Turns, because you wanted to make a podcast that celebrates human disaster without forcing everything to be a lesson.
Yeah, like, I can't do it anymore. I can't have one more thing to fail at, which is that I didn't manage to turn everything into some sort of forced, fabricated silver lining. Not everything has a great lesson. Sometimes life is just out to get you, and we just have to stop hiding from that, because
Right.
most of us aren't turning into CEO billionaires after an embarrassing disaster.
Yeah.
We just have to just shrivel up and wiggle away and hope no one remembers. And I wanted to find a way to have a comedy disaster podcast where I get the funniest comedians in the
Oh, I
world
love funny.
to come and tell me their worst disaster stories, where we don't turn it into something fabulous.
Right.
We just own it together. There's a democracy to humiliation, although I think it specifically picks me out.
Well, what was your last inspiration straw? Like, you don't have to say the podcast, but what was the last silver lining, lemon into lemonades moment where you were like, this?
Just all of social media, all these biohacking bros, and all these, like, where they play the violins under, and it just feels like, again, another way to set people up for disappointment. Like, let's just, especially women, let's just allow women to get embarrassed and to have embarrassing moments
gosh,
and
I
know
have
that
lots of
life
those.
continues on. It was really interesting booking for the podcast. It was much harder to get women to come on than men, because men feel so much more comfortable owning embarrassing
Brian
moments.
No, not at all. Yeah.
So I guess he's not getting booked.
No, but it was harder to book women to, and I also feel as though there's a trend where women's self-consciousness is on the up. I think post Me Too, everyone was like, vagina. And now that seems to have dissipated as the beauty standard has become very intense, as sexualizing yourself has become very intense again. And I think that people feel more self-conscious and like they need to uphold these patriarchal definitions of what a woman's supposed to be. So I have noticed, the women who have come on are hilarious, but there's a reticence to come and be embarrassing and to own the shame at the moment that I never saw on my last podcast.
Well, you know what I find though, and I don't want to taint the podcast's point, but I find what you're doing inspirational. This is why though, because I find when people
don't shove a
I know,
silver lining
I guess it's over
up
now,
my
guys.
bum.
Up your bum.
Don't
because
you do it.
To take messy and say it's all messy, because I cling to people that are not put together and well. Like I walk in the world of Bridget Jones, all the things. But when you laugh about it and you say, life is embarrassing, life is messy, there's not always a message. I find that inspirational because I find community in that. And I say,
yeah,
let's do this.
We're anti-inspiration, pro-commiseration. We are creating a space where everyone can just be themselves. And it's amazing. It's so cathartic. Whenever people leave, they're like, I needed to get that off my chest. It's
Laughing
very
is
bonding as
cathartic.
well.
It's very hard not to inspire Sarah, I have to be honest with you. She gets inspired by really...
You disgust me.
Yes.
I know. I am literally the antithesis.
You're very self-effacing, though. You both are. But is that something, have you always been that way? Or
I'm
is
English.
That,
That's
what it is.
Yeah, I'd lose my passport if I ever had any self-confidence. That's what they're really scanning for. It's not weapons. It's any cell of positive thought or good self-talk.
Sure. Yeah. Well, much like the podcast, a good place is kind of what you said on the show today. It's the show that was needed in our divided world. Tell us more about that.
Well, you've just got all these different people who all find each other insufferable and quite alien. They're all from different backgrounds, cultures, countries, different ideologies, different ways of looking at the world. But ultimately, they have more in common than they have as differences. Mm-hmm. And so they put those differences aside and work together towards a greater future. And if you look at what's happening in America now, where the media is fueling, throwing gasoline on the division in this country, it's very convenient for the government if we don't think about the fact that we all are struggling to pay rent or have food or baby formula or the mental health crisis, the homelessness crisis. There's all these problems that we all feel united in. Everyone wants to feel safe and fed and housed, and they want their loved ones to be okay. Yeah. But that's a problem for the government to solve, and the government don't want to solve that.
They
so
can't
it's much
paint
easier.
On it. That's how they win and lose.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But also that's how they distract us from dealing with the real systemic issues. Like Laverne Cox, I think, was on your show saying that I think we're focusing on the wrong 1%. It's not trans people who are keeping your problems away. It's billionaires. And so it benefits the billionaires and the government and the people who don't want to fix the problems and don't want to spend the money because they're putting it into military contracts or whatever. And so instead we turn on each other and we turn on the most vulnerable members of society. And this is from a playbook of fascism that we've seen again and again and again. And that exists regardless of whether it's a Republican or Democratic government. Both sides fail everyone, which is why populism works in America, because people feel failed by institutions that don't serve them and continue culture wars. And until we, the public, stop engaging with the culture war, stop feeding into it, buying into it, start to actually use some critical thought, we are going to continue to be played. They're playing all of us. It's not right and left. It's up. We need to be looking up.
The socioeconomic division in this country, to me, has always been the target problem.
It is, and that's why we keep people poor, because then we keep them distracted and distressed, and they don't know how to organize.
But in the meantime, rather than looking up and down, they distract us left and right, which is one of my issues with identity politics, but is they break us apart by that.
And the left are insufferable and sanctimonious and like bursting with moral superiority, and they're also classist and a little racist. And they ignore the problems of the working class. They ignore the problems of people who don't have enough money for food, and we sit there hyper-focusing on things, things that make us immediately look better than someone else. It's like, most of the people in this country, the majority of the people in this country didn't actually vote. What did we do to stop them from engaging in the election on both sides?
Yeah, these are important questions to ask.
The right are welcoming. You get one thing right and the right will welcome you in. You get one thing wrong and everything you got right gets dispelled and you get cast aside by the left. We have a huge messaging issue. And I do not identify with liberals anymore. I have the same emotional values of human rights, but I really find everything intolerable, embarrassing, and I used to be part of that, you know.
Well,
so I broke away 5 years ago.
But do you find yourself identifying with the right now, or just no?
Yeah. I
just it was the natural follow-up.
I love fascism.
Yes.
No, I find myself understanding the people who've abandoned the left.
Yes.
I understand that impulse. I have immense empathy, and I think either way, two-party politics is a nightmare.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think before we focus on what the other side are doing, we need to clean up our own side first.
Right.
Yeah, but that's the part that's not allowed on the left that bothers me the most. So
yes.
I am an independent, and this is one of the reasons. The second you have a nuanced view on the left, you're not one of us.
No, and that's what, like I said, I don't even mean us anymore. I think I would call myself independent as well, because of that. And so I just feel very strongly that we must focus on our similarities rather than our differences. I love this country. This country has given me immeasurable joy, peace, and opportunity. I, as an outsider, you know, and having lived in places that are far more restrictive than this country, you know, it's very trendy to say America's the worst place in the world, and America has a terrible history. But it's also an extraordinary place with potential for great freedom. And I'm sad to see it not live up to its potential of a joyous place to live.
I agree.
Because it can be, and dreams can come true here. And we have to maintain hope and belief in change.
Jameela, you're inspiring Sarah, I have to tell you.
Here we go
you're
again.
making this podcast very inspiring, and
she's
it's
trying
a problem.
so hard not to, but it's working.
Sorry.
No, but one thing we didn't get around to today that I really wanted to talk to you about is you kind of address the pressure on women in today's world, really forever world, of marriage and children.
Yeah.
And they are something a lot of women feel pressure over, like, what's next? Are you going to do this? And you said one of the best decisions you ever made is not to be a mother, and you don't really care about marriage.
Yeah. I just, I think the ultimate best decision I ever made was cutting bangs. But then after that, right under that was not having children and not wanting to get married. I don't love anything that feels institutional, and I don't like signing pieces of paper whenever I can avoid it, other than an autograph. Obviously,
of course,
I love an autograph. But yeah, I'm not interested in it. I'm not interested in having anything that feels like my choice or agency are taken away. And I think marriage is a choice, and it's a beautiful choice. And I've been in a committed relationship for 11 years almost, you know, so I may as well be married. We own property together. But the point is that I like the idea that I choose, you know, Goldie Hawn said this about Kurt Russell. They've been together for 30 odd years and they've never gotten married. And she said, I choose him every day. And I said that to my boyfriend when he first broached the subject of marriage. I was like, I want to choose you every day. And so maybe it's something we'll have to do one day so that we can be allowed in a hospital room with each other. Which is, and that's sad that that's a must, but
maybe that'll change by then.
He's my family, and I don't need a piece of paper to know that. And when it comes to children, I just can't be bothered. I really can't be bothered. I'm tired, and I've already been at enough risk in my life, and I don't want to incur more risk upon myself. And this is a country that doesn't look after the women who do get pregnant.
They don't look after the children.
They're pro-birth. They're not pro-life. They don't look after the mother or the child once born. Yeah. And I think that that's something that's very sad. And I worry that the people on the right who, you know, are pro-birth aren't really considering what's going to happen to our society if we force these births, because there's no societal infrastructure. That's going to lead to a chaotic society that you are still going to have to live in.
Well, it's a cycle they're creating, though, because the pro-birth part, you put kids in, whether they're so many kids or pregnancies where people can't take care of the kids, they end up impoverished. When you look at the statistics of poverty and what that
leads
does
to crime,
and then you get mad at the system when there's criminals or there's wayward people that haven't. You don't feed them. You don't, and it's.
We should take morals out of it for a second and just look at logic. Honestly, if we just could take our feelings out of so much of this and go, logistically, if you force another, you know, we're so worried about having too many people in this country.
I feel that way.
But there's a million people a year who will now be forced into this country to unprepared parents and an unprepared, overwhelmed system when it comes to Medicare, healthcare. So, you know, you're worried about people sponging off a system that you're now forcing people who cannot be looked after. The adoption services here is a mess.
Yes.
And black boys are, I think, something like 5 times less likely to be adopted, and yet it's lots of cities and counties that have predominantly black people in it where these abortion rights are the most restrictive. So just think of the logic. Don't worry about whether you're a good or a bad person or if anyone's going to judge you. Think about what another million or so a year of people who, that's essentially potentially 1 million more homeless people added to the streets every year. That contributes to a chaotic society who will be quote unquote, feeding off your resources. America is not in a great place, and I think that we can actually approach this from peace and logic rather than turning into you're a bad person and I'm going to label you. Let's just break this down to what kind of society do we want to live in? How do we get there together? And I think that we would actually do much better.
I want to ask you about something you've said, which is an interesting quote. Everything I do is for the 85-year-old me. And I want to look back and thank me, which is an interesting way to look at it. What do you think your 85-year-old self would be most proud of so far?
Bangs?
I think my bangs, yeah.
I agree.
Listen.
They are above reproach.
If I was with my 20-year-old self right now, I'd kick her in the vagina. She's ruined my life. She's ruined it. My kidneys don't work as well. My liver, my bone density is rubbish. All those decisions she made, all those 1-month house parties she went to.
Yeah.
She's not safe.
You look like you're just falling apart, I gotta say.
She's not safe in a room with me.
Yeah.
I am truly like pieced together with sellotape. It's like death becomes her right now. Just one crack and it's all undone. But I want 85-year-old me to not look back on me now and go, why did you do that to me? Why were you worried about my arrival? Like, there's so much fear-mongering around aging for women in particular. And we're taught to disrespect our older selves and to make decisions now in the short term to rush to meet a beauty or societal standard. That's only going to change anyway. I've been around 40 years. I've watched the loop go round and round. Everything goes in and out according to whatever they can make the most money off of. As soon as everyone's gotten their BBLs out, the BBL's going to come back in and everyone's going to put them back in. Yep. It's ridiculous. And so I want my 85-year-old self to know that I was looking forward to her arrival, that I respect her and that I want to protect her and I want to nourish my body with enough food and I want to walk my dogs every day for her bone density and I want to create joyous memories. I don't want to live my life, in being, obedient to misogyny, because that's what it is. It's misogyny that teaches women, to consider age as a bad thing. And the foundation of that is the fact that we've taught women, we've gaslit women into believing that we have less value as we get older, but we have exponentially more value. I have never felt happier, smarter. I'm slightly better in bed, which is very exciting for me and my boyfriend. But you acquire life skills, life understanding, and you become a better and more rounded person. You also know what you like and what you don't like, and that becomes very threatening, as we're now seeing with the male entitlement epidemic, or the male loneliness epidemic, whichever way you want to look at it. I think it's both happening at the same time. So we're scared that women will give the cheat codes to the younger women. So we say, go away and look younger and act younger and dress younger and just stop speaking because you have no value, because you're not fertile. And so that's, I think, the basis of it all. And I think that men have it right in embracing age and embracing audacity. And I don't want them to stop what they're doing. I'd like for us to step up and do the same and give ourselves permission to take up that space.
But
and
I would
to
argue
grow
it affects
older.
not to this. I totally concede your point because I agree with it. But I do think that men struggle more than we realize, because I think the age thing is a mortality. I think society is also created more so on women, but I also think men chase youth. And it's weird because there are societies, a lot of ancient societies and cultures that honored the elderly. They were the most revered, like Native American tribes, often the most senior. And there was a reverence to that age. I would argue men go through, they also battle it. There's something happening where we pretend that none of us, I don't think, would go back to being 15, 18. I would never go backwards. No. But we strive for it in another sense. Brian?
Yes. I mean, like, you can answer this,
Sure.
but ultimately I do believe, though, that men are taught to build and they're not taught to fear their older years, and they seem to acquire dignity, gravitas, being more of a leader.
I think to a sense, I think so.
You know what I mean? I'm not saying there's no fear of losing your youth or virility.
No, for sure there is, and you know, I'm going gray and it's driving me crazy. But I definitely feel more comfortable in my skin than I did 10 years ago. And in my role
too,
here
though.
at
And
the
no
show
one goes,
and everything else.
"Are you okay? You look tired."
Yeah.
The way that they do to us, and they don't make you feel invisible. If anything, men become more visible. And when we shoot men in magazines, we shoot them in high definition to make them look even wrinklier, because then they will look even wiser. And with women, we just airbrush them.
Yeah, we take out everything.
That blur that happens underneath women's eyes.
There's a dignity
on
for men
screen.
aging that I think
and it's considered
implied.
Yes, and it's considered embarrassing for women to dare to age.
I think the part I see though is the men that are engaging more in plastic surgery. Maybe it's in cities.
Well, no, that's
you
what
noticed?
and gay
happens.
men are in a completely they're in
Gay
the
men, but I even
trenches
mean
with women.
I even mean straight men. Like there are men that are now engaging in these practices that I'm like, what is going on here? Because it actually, I see why women do it. It bothers
I think
me
it's
when
great if they do it, so they can see how dangerous this is, and maybe we can all make a collective decision to stop together. But I do feel tremendous empathy for boys. I feel very, very worried for them. A lot of my work is centered around making sure that women come to the table with men to have these conversations, because I don't think this divide, again, is working for us. Going off into our echo chambers of men are trash and women are all gold diggers, you know, I don't think that's working for us. And I think that men have done an astonishing job in, you know, building this world up, you know, and putting their bodies on the line. It's men who are sorting out most of the sewage. It's men who are in the high rises cleaning the buildings. It is men whose bodies are predominantly on the front line of a war. And we don't count how many of them have died when there is a war. We count the women and children. And so I do believe that there's this feeling that in different ways our bodies are dehumanized and don't count for something. And I think that women take on the burden of keeping our society running, and they take on the burden of the majority of childcare and labor, and also the onslaught.
There's a lot of invisible labor type.
Exactly, and the onslaught of living in a world that is so patriarchal. But women have been socialized to improve their emotional intelligence and improve their ability to organize and create community. And so I would love for us to be able to encourage men to learn from us how to do that, because they're not talking to each other, they're not talking to us.
No, the emotional,
And I worry greatly, you know,
about you, Brian.
About
me
specifically you, but you know,
that's why we're here.
Yeah.
But I just think I don't think
Heather,
I don't think misogyny and misandry are even, because misogyny kills and misandry is a response to misogyny. But I do think that misandry is not getting us anywhere, and we are alienating the people that we most need to liberate us. And so I do feel as a feminist, it is not everyone has the energy to do this, but I have a tremendous urge to reach out across to men and say, who hurt you? Because it's normally other men. Men are hurt at higher numbers than women are hurt by other men. We have a common enemy in violence of men, and we need to come together and sort this out together, not keep pointing fingers at each other. You know, I was asked on stage the other day by a woman who said, you know, how do I teach my son love and empathy and kindness? And I was like, you don't need to teach him that. That's already in him. What have we gotten to with the point of messaging where we think that boys aren't born with those things? It's chiseled away at and it's siphoned out of them by toxic male predators on the internet who tell them lies about themselves. These are men who are not advanced, who are single, who are lonely, who are watching women overtake them in mortgages, in education, in independence and life. And those men are terrified that not only will women leave them behind, but so will other men. It's like, what an emasculating way to treat men, as if men aren't capable of emotional growth. You know, I bet if we challenged men, I bet you can't do more therapy than me. I reckon they'd step up to the plate. Let's gamify it. You know what I mean?
Gamify.
I'll show
But
you.
But I know so many men. You seem like a wonderful man. I know so many men who have risen to the challenge.
Podcast, would you say? I don't know if we'd go with.
No, I think that's right. I think.
Brian's soul.
I mean, I have many male friends that we don't talk much about besides sports and a little politics and things like that. And I have different relationships with the women in my life where I've never had trouble being emotional talking with women about my feelings or anything else, but many of my friends do. And I don't know, it does seem hardwired, but I'm sure it's a reflection of society and upbringing and all those things.
It's not hardwired.
No.
Because little boys tell their mummies.
I was just going to say the things my boys tell me.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because I have daughters.
Yeah. The boys will tell. Well, all 3 kids are pretty much the same. The way they at this age come out, like they all come to me and they'll tell me a feeling, or Alec was telling me a story about a friend the other day, and he's like, it really hurt my feelings when he did this, and he's 9. So he's, you do come out that way.
We beat it out of them. There is cortisol in the tears of children. They have tested the tears of children, and there's cortisol. That's the stress hormone. Mm-hmm. So when you tell little boys, don't cry, you let girls let it out, and you tell boys, don't be like a girl, don't cry, that becomes destructive energy. That's
there's nothing more shameful for a boy than to cry in front of his friends. I mean, there's nothing. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely the worst thing.
There was this woman on the internet who made this wonderful point that we teach girls how to be women, and we don't teach boys how to be men. We just teach them not to be like women. There's no guidance of masculinity. I think masculinity is beautiful, and the point in feminism at which we started attacking all masculinity, I thought was insane, especially given that I'm quite a masculine woman. I love masculinity.
I have masculine energy.
Yeah, I love masculinity. I think it's so beautiful. Like, the men in my life are men I look up to, I admire, I rely on them, I collaborate with them. I think masculinity is gorgeous, but men are not raised towards healthy masculinity. Yeah. They're just told, don't be like them. So that's why they're so homophobic. That's why they are so misogynist sometimes, is because
they don't cry.
It's why they don't cry,
but
they don't do that out of choice. And I hate this idea that there's this entire agency as to how they become programmed. They are brainwashed, just like we're brainwashed.
Yeah.
But they're brainwashed to harm outwards, and we are brainwashed to harm normally inwards. And that's now pouring out of us, and now, we're just all screaming at each other, which is very disturbing. But I do believe that there is a more peaceful way for us to speak politically, socially, and in every way. We need to work on our communication skills.
It's not an absence of or an exclusion of any other person or group. I think that's the thing when you speak about
we need
things,
to include, and so I get a lot of heat from other feminists for saying things like, we need to extend some empathy towards men, but what other choice do we have? Is your way working? How's it going, babe?
Yeah.
How's the abortion care access going for you? How do you think our rights are getting? Do you feel safer in the street? I sure don't. Mm-hmm. And so I really want to find a better way, and that better way is a combination of persistence and strength and peace. We needed Malcolm X. We also needed Martin Luther King. Throughout history, the only way to overcome oppression, you can't just fight your way through. You also have to appeal to the empathy of the oppressor. And you cannot deny that has happened every single time. No one has hated their way back from oppression. Mm-hmm. And so we just need to be a bit more thoughtful about the way that we're engaging in these conversations.
Well, I have loved this conversation, and it's been incredibly thoughtful, and you've given me a lot to think about. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our thanks to Jameela Jamil. Her new podcast, Wrong Turns, premieres tomorrow, wherever you stream your podcast.
And it's very funny and not serious like I've been on this chat.
But it's been fantastic.
shocked it's funny. Yeah. I've just never seen that side of you.
Yeah. This has been great.
Well, I'm going to beat you up. That's it.
All right. Now now we got a podcast. All right.
I was saying the other day, quickly, that I was like, like the way that women hurt other women, like we're just so mean to each other, and there's this kind of like insidious, unseen unkindness that women engage in, which is ridiculous considering we all have enough to deal with when it comes to men. I was like, maybe the way that men resolve their trauma is normally just to hit each other. I was like, I think women need to start hitting each other.
I used to do that to my sister and my brother.
Yeah, let's just start hitting again, Let's start clawing each other out. We've got these great nails. I think maybe we need to start hitting each other, and that will end so much of pervasive female bullying. And let's end on that.
Make women fight again.
Make women fight again.
It'd be settled in one rouse.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be dead by now. But
I was going to say, I don't know. I think, can you take Sarah? Be interesting.
I could not take Sarah.
Did you
joking?
Hear about
oh my god,
my masculine energy.
No, of course. I apologize.
I have a masculine personality, but I have the soul of
I have a physical
those
masculine
inflatable
energy.
things outside a sail.
Like
Sure. That's what I'm like.
I see it.
So yeah.
Thank there we go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. Tomorrow we'll be back with Anna Navarro, and thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.